Hello, everyone, and welcome to my live tarot Q&A. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I absolutely love doing live Q&As. It's one of my favorite things to do. I love hearing people's tarot questions and doing my best to answer them to the best of my abilities. So I'm super excited to be here, and I just want to take a moment to welcome you. And I guess I'll start off by kind of introducing myself and telling you a little bit about myself before we get into things. So my name is Kate. I'm also known as the Daily Tarot Girl. I'm a tarot reader and a tarot teacher, and I've been reading tarot for well over 10 years now. I think it's actually close to 15 years. I've been telling people that I've been reading for 10 years for the last 5 years. And so now I'm like, actually, I think it's longer than 10 years. I think it's like 15. And I've been teaching tarot for, I think, about 8 or 9 years. Yeah, that sounds about right. I haven't been keeping track really, but so I kind of specialize in doing what I would call intuitive tarot reading. So one question I get asked a lot is like, how important is it to know the traditional meanings of tarot? How important is that to have like a good understanding of the system of tarot versus being able to use your intuition? And I always say both are equally important. I learned, that all the traditional meanings and all that before I really started well, actually, I learned those things at the same time that I was learning how to tap into my intuition. But I always think that reading the cards intuitively, as well as acknowledging the traditional meanings, really brings a sense of like spark and aliveness and magic to your reading. So that is kind of my specialty, is being able to read the cards intuitively. So I see there's lots of people joining. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome, Jackie. You're the first one here. You're raring to go. I love it. Hello, Celine. Welcome. Jacob, hello. Starly, TJ, Veronica, Judy, Dara, Angelic, Michelle, Vicky, JP. Hello, everyone. Welcome. All right, so JP, you're from Portugal. Wonderful. Hello, Juliet and Mary. Okay, so yeah, the whole point of me doing this live is to answer all the questions that you might have about tarot. So that could be questions about giving people readings. It could be questions about giving yourself a reading, or even just questions around learning tarot, and things like that. I want to start out by asking you a question. What do you find is your biggest stumbling block or your biggest challenge when it comes to tarot, when it comes to learning tarot, let's say? Hey, welcome, Conchi from Spain, Veronica from Israel. All right, so here's the first question, is from Celine. Is it necessary to have actual characters on the pip cards to interpret accurately? I have a new deck I love without characters, and I find it more challenging, but maybe it doesn't have to be. Yeah, so there's sort of two different kind of styles of tarot deck. So there's one that I would call like the Rider-Waite style, and that is a tarot deck where the minor arcana cards are fully illustrated, like there's people and there's scenes and there's things happening on them. And then there's what is usually referred to as like a pip deck, where the minor arcana cards don't have people or really much happening on them. They just have like the symbol. So they're kind of like playing cards in a way. So let's say it's the 6 of Swords, there'll just be 6 swords on that card, and there's no scene, there's nothing really happening. And that was actually what the original tarot decks looked like. So originally, the first few tarot decks, for a long time, only the major arcana cards were illustrated with people and things happening on them, and the minors weren't. And when Pamela Coleman Smith created the Rider-Waite Smith deck, it was different. That was, I think, the first time that had been done, where the minor arcana cards are fully illustrated. And I do find decks that don't have fully illustrated minors to be trickier to read. I find what I do with those decks is if I get a minor card, I immediately try to imagine in my head the Rider-Waite equivalent and what it looks like. So I do find them more difficult to read because there's, like, you really have to know your tarot well to read with a deck like that. And there's not a lot to work with intuitively. There's not, you know, you don't have the visual elements really on that card to work with them. It's fine if you have a really solid understanding of what all the cards mean, but you don't have those visual triggers to kind of trigger your memory. So let me go back to what your question was. Is it necessary to have characters? So no, it's not necessary. And I've experimented, you know, I have a few decks that don't have fully illustrated minors. And I find sometimes, particularly when I'm reading, if I'm giving a reading to someone else and they're sitting in front of me, I like that because I find when I'm reading with like a Rider-Waite style deck, the person I'm reading for will see the cards and they'll see the images and they'll have a preconceived idea. Or, you know, they'll look at the image and they'll think they know what the card means or whatever. And, you know, if they see like a card like Six of Swords or Five of Cups, they're like, oh, that looks like a bad card or whatever. Whereas when you're using a deck that, you know, just has the symbols, I feel like I'm kind of, it sort of circumvents that issue. It's like the person I'm reading for has no idea what these cards mean. And sometimes I kind of like that. But I prefer decks that have like really fully illustrated minors with characters. I find it a lot easier to interact with and to read. All right, so the question that I posed to you guys was, what's your biggest challenge when it comes to learning tarot? So I'm just going to read some of your responses. So doing a reading over and over, I like that one because that's something that I did when I was learning tarot. I'd do a reading. If I didn't like the cards I got, I would ask the same question again and redo the reading. I still sometimes do that, full disclosure. Mary, you said confidence. Yes, that's a big one. Angelic Michelle says applying meaning to the reading is difficult sometimes. Yes. Yeah. Making assumptions. Yes. Okay. So Jacob asks, how are you dealing with the energy drain if appearing? How are you dealing with the energy drain if appearing? I'm not 100% sure what that means, Jacob. So if you just want to elaborate, and I'd love to answer your question because your question intrigues me, but I'm not 100% sure what you're asking me. I think you're talking about the energy drain that happens sometimes when you're giving someone a reading, but I'll wait to hear back from you before I dive into that question. All right. So Liz, you say the biggest challenge with tarot is trying to read for myself. How do you get better at reading for yourself? My readings on everyone else are accurate, but the ones for myself aren't. So what would you say, Liz? What is it that you struggle with when you read for yourself? Because there's all different things that can happen. So you may find that when you read for yourself that you feel too biased, like you're too close to the issue being read for. If that's the case, here's my suggestion. Instead of reading directly about the topic, so for example, let's say I want to know, I'm trying to think of a good example for this. Okay, so a few years ago, I was having some health problems, and it was about five years ago. I was having some health issues, and whenever I read about my health issue, I would ask my tarot things like, what should I do about this issue? Or am I going to get better? Or should I get surgery? Should I take medication? And because I was so stressed out about this issue, I found the readings were difficult for me to interpret. And I was always worried that my own biases would get in the way. And so what I found helpful was, instead of asking about the issue directly, I would ask my deck, what do I need to do to feel more at ease with this situation? Or how do I navigate this situation? what can I do to support myself during this time? And all of a sudden, I started doing readings that were so helpful and so full of wisdom. And I got insights like, I need to talk to people who've had this same medical issue. I need to see a variety of doctors, not just one. I need to start meditating regularly. And like, I got all this like really helpful info. And I was able to get through that time and navigate it, quite well. So instead of reading, and I see you're saying, yeah, when you read for yourself, you're too close to the issue. Like you already have an answer that you want. Yeah. So see if you can read about the issue indirectly. So asking, instead of saying, what should I do in this situation? You could ask, what do I need to, let me think. I'm getting tongue-tied. Yeah, instead of asking directly about it, it's like, what can I do for myself to feel better about this issue? How can I support myself in making a decision rather than saying, what decision should I make? I find sometimes when I ask my tarot deck, should I do this or should I do this? Sometimes it's not always helpful because you'll get two cards that are kind of similar. So asking myself, what do I need to do in order to make what do I need to do before I make a decision? And then I start getting some really interesting insights. So my tarot isn't telling me what decision to make, but it's telling me the steps I need to take first before I can make a good decision. I hope that makes sense. All right. Oh, thank you so much, James. Okay, so let me just scroll up because a bunch of you posted a whole bunch of stuff and I think I missed it. Okay, so Christina asked, can I have a reading? So no, Christina, I'm not doing readings. This is just a tarot Q&A about learning tarot and any questions you might have about giving readings either for yourself or others. So I'll be doing another live reading event probably in December, so not too long away. And I'd love to give you a reading then if you can come live. But for this Q&A, I'm not going to do any readings. Judy asks, how do you know when pulling a card if it means to do something or not to do it? I think that would depend on where that card appeared in a spread and what the question was. So obviously, if you ask the question, what should I do? And you get a card, I would say, it also depends. It depends too on what the card is. So I think if you ask, what do I need to do this week? And you get a card like the Seven of Swords. Well, the Seven of Swords shows a guy who's kind of looks like he's stealing swords. The card's not telling you to go steal something. It might be telling you to sort of examine your sense of belonging, or I don't know, something along those lines. So I think your question would depend on the card that you get, the position in the spread, the question that you've asked. Yeah, I don't know if I answered your question very well. I'm just starting to realize my brain isn't really functioning that well. Today, as I was getting ready for this to go live, I thought, I wonder if I should make myself a cup of coffee because I was kind of craving coffee. And I was like, I don't have time. I'm just going to do this like herbal tea. And now I'm regretting it. I think my brain could have used a little bit of a jolt of caffeine. Yeah. So Denise, you said the hardest thing for you is relying on your intuition. That can be a tricky one for sure. Okay, so JP, you said, I've made one reading that I didn't like the card that popped up, so I shuffled again. I know that's cheating. Yeah, I would suggest, instead of if you get a card you don't like, instead of putting it back in the deck and reshuffling, leave the card out and just draw a second card to give you a little more information about the first card. Sometimes that can be more helpful. Oh, okay, so Sita, you say sometimes you get the same card over and over again in a reading, and recently you've been getting the Page of Cups in your current readings. Yeah, and that's always funny. I go through phases sometimes where I'll get the same card as well. I remember when I was still pretty new to tarot, I was getting the Tower in all my readings for the longest time. And it really stressed me out. And then I lost my job, and then I stopped getting the Tower in my readings. But it turned out good. It turned out good that I lost my job. It led to bigger and better things. But yeah, that's always interesting when you keep getting the same card over and over. And usually there's a few reasons why that can happen. Often the readings that we do and the cards that come up are a reflection of the energy in our life. It could be energy that is within you, the energy that you're holding, or just, the energy that's surrounding you. Or the cards are trying to give you a message, and maybe you got was it the Page of Cups? Yeah, the Page of Cups. So maybe the first couple times you read the Page of Cups, you didn't quite get the message correctly, so that the card will keep appearing for you. So each time it comes up, see if you can look at it from a different angle and keep an open mind. And I think it helps to just really relax and be kind of like almost experimental, like you're kind of going to explore this card, go on a little bit of an adventure with this card, instead of getting really frustrated and being like, what is it trying to say? Because I feel like when you start stressing about it, that's when it's really hard to see the card in a different light. So just keeping it light and just being like, I wonder what this card's trying to say to me. And even asking the card, like, what is it that you're trying to say? And see if you can have a dialogue with the Page of Cups. Like, really, and I mean, I know this kind of requires you to really stretch your imagination a little bit, but, imagine the Page of Cups, blowing up into like a life-size person stepping out of the card into your office, your living room, and having a conversation with you, and see what happens. Okay, so Meredith asks, how do you handle it when clients cry because you are so right on for them and they are very moved by what you have said? All right. I mean, in a way, I would kind of take that as a compliment. If your reading was so that really like touched them, that you were moved to tears. I think sometimes what can happen is someone finally feels really seen in a tarot reading and really understood. And if they haven't felt seen or understood for a while leading up to the reading, that experience can cause like an emotional release. So it's not a bad thing. How do I handle it? I'm just trying to think the last time I had someone cry. I think I gave them a Kleenex, and yeah, I gave them a Kleenex. I mean, it depends why they're crying, right? If they're crying because something you said in the reading is really upsetting, I mean, that's different. I'm going to handle that differently than if, I said something positive, but that made them cry. Yeah, I think when that happens, when your client starts to become emotional, you as the tarot reader are basically like holding a space for them. And so I think just, being present with them, maybe even just giving them a moment to, just breathe and be with the feeling before you, dive back into the reading. Because I think sometimes when someone gets emotional, if you just steamroll ahead with the reading, they may not really hear much what you're going to say if they're really emotional. So I would, maybe just pause for a moment and really kind of hold the space and just sort of be there as the reader. And then I think you'll know intuitively when it's time to move on with the reading. And I would like check in with the person too, to make sure they're okay and everything. But that's a good sign, I think, Meredith, if you've done readings where it resonates with them so strongly that they're moved to tears. Okay, so Jacob originally asked a question up here, which I wasn't sure what he was asking. So how are you dealing with the energy drain if appearing? And then Jacob elaborated, when you're tapping into the energy of somebody or general one for the bigger group, i.e. zodiac collective of your surroundings. Oh, okay. Well, Jacob, I'm still confused. Okay, let me just reread your question. How do you deal with the energy drain when you're tapping into the energy of somebody? Or, okay. I'm trying to think if that happens to me. It sometimes happens to me when I'm reading for someone in person, where I'll be reading for someone, and it's interesting because some people you read for them, and I find this isn't just with in-person readings. This is also when I do my distant, like recorded readings, where I'm just doing the reading on my own, recording my voice, and the person isn't live; they're not there. And it's interesting because some people are so easy to read for, and you sit down to do the reading, and it just flows, and it just feels like you're just channeling information. The info is coming to you. You're looking at the cards are speaking to you. It's so easy and seamless, and you just feel in the flow. And then by the end of the reading, you feel good. Maybe you even feel energized. And then there's readings that are like the exact opposite of that. And you may go through all the same setup process. I like to ground myself, and I say my intention. I get centered in my heart before a reading. But there's some readings that just don't flow well. And it's like, feels like you're pulling teeth the whole time, and you're really struggling to get, get information and wisdom from the cards. And it's not a flow. And I don't know why that happens. I don't know why that happens. I think there's a multiple different reasons why it might happen. So I think sometimes the person you're reading for may not be fully open to being read. It's just harder to connect with their energy for some reason. Sometimes it's you, the reader. Maybe you're just having an off day or something like that. Or you didn't eat yet that day, or you haven't had your morning coffee or whatever. And I think sometimes when I'm doing a reading, if there's like really intense questions, I struggle with that. And other times not, though. Other times that's easy to do. It really just depends. I think there's multiple factors. So how do I deal with an energy drain? I don't know. I guess I don't. I mean, I take breaks between readings. So if I've had a reading that just really drained my energy, I give myself time to kind of get my energy back up again. I mean, for me, especially early on in my reading career, in the first 2 or 3 years, I identified the things that were really draining my energy. So I found, if I was reading for someone who I felt had really high expectations as to what I was going to do in the reading, like if I could tell that they thought that I was going to read their future and like tell them all this stuff about their future and be like 100% accurate, that would put a lot of pressure on me, and I would get kind of stressed out, and I would feel my energy being drained then. So I find a lot of times my energy gets drained if I feel like I can't live up to someone's expectations, or if I feel like sometimes I'll put expectations on myself, and then I'm like, wait a minute, that's not fair. Like, that's not my job as a reader. So if I feel like, it's my job as a reader to make that person happy or make that person feel good or tell them what they want to hear, that's very draining for me as a reader. So really getting clear on what my role as a reader is and what I am, why I'm here, what my intention is, and getting clear on what I'm not responsible for. Like, I'm not responsible for, making someone happy. Obviously my readings, I want them to be positive and uplifting, but it's not my responsibility. You can't make someone feel a certain way. And I know that I can't predict the future with any real accuracy. So I don't claim to do that. I don't sell myself as that kind of reader, and I'm very clear on that from the start. So I don't know if that answers your question, Jacob, but I hope it does. Okay, I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom and then work my way up. Okay, Allison, to deal with an energy drain. Oh, maybe this is just, maybe Allison, you're just posting a suggestion. To deal with an energy drain, taking some deep breaths can help to infuse me with lots of my own energy, and negative energy bounces off. Yeah, breathing deeply is a good one. I also find just a lot of grounding exercises are helpful too. All right. So David Van Helsing says, at a recent one-card reading, the Halloween party, you seem to sense that the person was a healthcare worker. I think the card was 9 of Wands. Why healthcare? Okay, why did I think that? So I was using the Everyday Witch Tarot, and in the 9 of Wands card, the person is wearing bandages on her head, and she's got armor, and she looks exhausted and burnt out. And I think I was associating, maybe I was associating looking tired and burnt out with working in healthcare. That might have been why I said that. I can't quite, I remember this reading, but I can't really remember specifically why I said that specifically. I think I just intuited it. So like it just kind of popped into my head. I think the bandages on her head, but you know, I could have just as easily thought she was suffering from a head injury or something like that. Yeah, I don't know why I said that. I think it was just like an intuitive hit. So I wish I could be more open and specific about like my reason for saying that, but I don't remember specifically why I said that. I think I was associating 9 of Wands with healing, even though typically that's not what that card is necessarily about. I saw it that way. I mean, the person on that card looks like they're in need of healing, so I think that might be kind of why I tapped into that. Yeah, and Angelic Michelle says crystals help with energy drain. Yeah, for a lot of people they do. I haven't noticed a huge difference, but I like using crystals in readings. I like to have crystals on my reading table. Okay. That's great to hear, Meredith, that you're increasing your confidence in reading. That makes all the difference once you start to feel more confident. That's always good, because I think confidence is the one thing that all readers struggle with at some point. And I struggle with confidence in my readings all the time, just like less now than I did when I was new, much less, but it still comes up from time to time. Okay, so Debs from the UK asks, the Tower and the 9 and 10 of Swords are coming out a lot in readings. Do you think that global events can have an effect, i.e. the pandemic? So influencing those cards coming out so often. Yes, absolutely. I absolutely think that. So here's an interesting story. So every January, I offer private tarot readings. And what I notice, so what happens is I don't offer private tarot readings year round. I just do it in January and sometimes in the summer as well. And so what I notice is I will do, you know, a whole bunch of readings in a pretty short amount of time. And what I notice is that certain cards will come up for almost everyone. Now, the year the pandemic happened, so 2020, I did all those readings in January. The pandemic didn't really start happening until like March, I think, for most people, unless you were in China, then it was earlier. And what I noticed about the readings I did in January is the death card came up for I want to say almost everyone I read for. There's a few people that didn't get it, but almost every reading I did, the death card came up. And I was like, wow, what is going on? And I think in my own reading, I did like a YouTube general reading. And I think in that reading, the death card came up as well. And I can see now that it symbolized an ending. I mean, 2020 was a big year where it was kind of the end of normal as we knew it. And a lot of businesses closed down. A lot of people literally died. But yeah, so it's I definitely think that global events can also have an effect on what cards come up, for sure. But it's always, like how the global event is affecting that person. So if there's a global event happening, but it's not really affecting that person, I don't think it's going to come up in the reading. But if it is having an effect, then I think it will. That's really interesting, though, that you're getting the Tower and the 9 and 10 of Swords. Okay, so this question is from Conchi. Who do you think is answering in a tarot reading? Is it your higher self, your spiritual guide, or your guardian angel? I don't know. That's something I've always wondered about too. I think it also depends who you're asking. So sometimes when I'm doing a reading, I'll specifically intend to connect to my higher self. Sometimes I'll specifically intend to connect with a spirit guide. Sometimes I'll intend just to connect with like universal energy when I do a reading. So I think intention plays a big role. But if you don't set an intention on who to connect with, I don't know. I think it could be a combination of things. I think mostly it would be your higher self, because I think that the you that you're consciously aware of is just a very small part of who you are. I think that we are much bigger. I think that we're multi-dimensional beings, but we're not fully aware of that. And so I think that there is this like much bigger, like wiser, more powerful part of ourselves, and we are just like one little part of that, having a human experience. And so I think that when we do a tarot reading, I think, and when we do like meditation, things like that, I think we're tapping into that bigger part of ourselves. Yeah. Okay. So Christina said, I was once told that one should never do a reading on yourself. Yeah, I've heard people say that too, but that's silly. You can definitely read for yourself. And I have met people who are like, oh, I would never read for myself. I just give readings. I don't do them for myself. And that's fine if you don't want to, but there's nothing wrong with doing a reading on yourself. And I don't think I ever would have learned how to read tarot if I didn't practice on myself, because that was, the bulk of my practice readings, doing readings on myself. And I think the most fun I've ever had with tarot has been giving myself readings and exploring the cards that way. I think that there's reasons why people say that. And I think a lot of people think that you shouldn't give readings to yourself because you as the reader are biased, and it's hard to look at your own life with an unbiased viewpoint, which is true. That is true, but I don't think that that's a reason to avoid reading for yourself. And there's ways to work around that, I think. So Sarah, you said that your favorite thing to do is lay 3 cards and create stories with the images. I love doing that too, Sarah. And you're always telling yourself that this is just playing with the cards, but I am actually starting to do little readings. But am I actually starting to do little readings? Perhaps, yes. You usually end up using the whole deck. Not sure if this counts, but then I start to think I should be referencing the books, but I don't enjoy it as much. I think what you're doing is perfect. And I think that approaching your deck in that kind of playful spirit where you're really engaging your imagination, your creativity, I think that that's really going to help you learn the cards and practice some of your reading skills. And you were kind of wondering, I'm just playing with the cards, but am I actually doing little readings? And one way to find out would be to kind of record some of the stuff that comes up in these sessions with your cards, and then look back on it, a week or a month later and see if that actually reflected something that was actually happening for you. Okay, I'm just scrolling up to see if I missed any questions. Okay, so Jen asks, I honestly don't know which spread is best to get the most accurate answers or close to it. The Celtic Cross seems very overwhelming. I know there's 3-card spreads, 12-card spreads, 5-card spreads. I think that the best spread to use really depends on what you're reading about and who you're reading for. I personally like doing 1-card readings. And if I want to use more cards, I like just creating my own spread kind of on the fly. And that is actually something that I teach in my tarot course, my upcoming tarot course. So I have a 4-week tarot course coming up. It's called The Daily Tarot Girl's Guide to Intuitive Tarot Reading. And classes start really soon. They start November 10th, and I'm going to close down registration the day before, so November 9th. I'm going to put the link to that class in the chat in case anyone's interested in checking it out. Okay, it's all about intuitive tarot reading, and we talk about spreads quite a bit in that course, and how to kind of create your own spreads. So back to your question, Jen. The Celtic Cross spread, I don't love that spread. I find it overwhelming too. I feel like there's too many cards. I don't love it. I like just creating my own spread, and I feel like less is more when it comes to cards. So I do a lot of 3-card spreads, unless I feel called to do a bigger reading. I like 9-card spreads. If someone comes to me for like a general reading, I love using 9 cards. But basically, you want to think, what is it that you want to know? What are you looking into? And let that kind of guide you on creating your own spread. Although, Jen, I want to say one thing, because you said you wanted to find a spread that helps you get the most accurate answers. And I find that I don't always get accurate answers with tarot reading. I find when I approach my tarot cards wanting answers, sometimes what happens is I just end up with more questions after. And so if I'm wanting an answer for something, I'll ask my cards, how can I find the answer to this? What do I need to do in order to solve this issue or to make this decision? What do I need to do? What's going to help me? And I find I use my cards kind of for that more than saying, what should I do? Or, what's going on here? That's just something I've kind of noticed over the years. Yeah, so this is a good question. So Greg says, I've only read for friends whom I know so well that I find it hard to separate what I know about them from what I see in the cards. Any advice? I have this issue too, Greg, and this is why I don't read for family, and I don't read for friends that often. My mug matches my shirt. I just noticed. I didn't plan it that way, I swear. I'm not that coordinated. Yeah, so I find that to be a really big challenge as well, Greg. You kind of have to, you almost have to pretend you don't know them. If you're gonna read for someone that you know really well, you almost have to pretend that you don't know them at all. And it may even help to do a reading for someone when they're not there in the room, like a recorded reading or even a written reading or something like that, where you can really just like pretend you're reading for someone that you don't know. Because I also find that really true. I assume, this is the funny thing, is when you read for someone you know, I tend to assume that I know everything about them, even though, of course, I don't. And so when I see the cards, I assume that I know what the cards are saying. And you really have to acknowledge that you probably don't know everything there is to know about this person. But it is tricky. I agree. I think it helps if, instead of reading for the person you know as seeing them as a personality, see them as a soul. So look at that person as a spirit, as a soul that is journeying through time, having a human temporary experience, rather than seeing them as like Fred from next door or whatever. Like, rather than looking at them as like a personality, see them on a soul level. And when you're drawing the cards and reading for them, think about reading for their soul, not their personality. And that might actually be helpful. Okay, here's a funny one. So Celine tried my Halloween tarot spread. Thank you, Celine, for trying it out. And she got generosity in the position of bury. So the bury position was like, what do you need to let go of for good? So you, Celine, you got generosity. It's funny. And so you didn't understand how to process that card's meaning in that position. Yeah, that's always tricky, right? When the card doesn't really fit with the position in the spread. Because you're like, am I supposed to let go of being generous? It could be, so in this case, when you get a positive card in a negative position, think of the positive card in the extreme. So generosity is good, but extreme generosity, and generosity for the wrong reasons, like being generous because you really want to be liked, or being generous because you're worried that if you're not, people will think you're a bitch. Maybe that's what you need to let go of. Not wanting to be too generous, overly generous, or generous for the wrong reasons. That might be what it was trying to tell you. But when that happens, when you get a positive card in a negative position, just think of that positive card in the extreme, because then it becomes unhealthy. Like, think about the sun. The sun is this positive tarot card. But if you take it to the extreme, it could mean feeling like you have to be positive all the time, or being positive in inappropriate situations where it would be more healthy to be, not so positive. Okay, so Vicky says, people often think that tarot reading is about reading the future. How do you explain that it's not? Okay, this is how I will explain it. I'm going to draw a little diagram here for everyone. Okay. Okay, so this is where you are now. This is, I don't know if you guys can see that properly. It might be backwards. So this is where you are. This is the present moment. And this is your life path. So this is where you were before now. This is what got you there. That's your life path. And then these are all potential timelines, potential outcomes and paths that you could go on. And what you do in the present will determine which path you line up with energetically, which path you go on, and what happens. So I don't believe that there's a predetermined path for us. If there was, then it would be totally possible to read the future with tarot cards. But there isn't, so it's impossible. We can make guesses. We can certainly make assumptions based on what the energy is like in the present moment and be somewhat accurate. But ultimately, we can't really read the future with 100% accuracy because there's all these different timelines that you could line up with in the now. What you do in the now, so the thoughts, the feelings, the energy, the decisions, the actions that you take now determine what path you go on. So I hope that diagram helps. I hope that makes sense. So what I tell people is, you could even draw them that little diagram. And what I tell people is that it's more helpful in a tarot reading if you tell me where you're wanting to go, and we can do a reading on what you should be doing right now that's going to increase your chances of going in the direction that you want to go. So I find your point of power is always in the now, and you're always existing in the now. You never exist in the past or in the future unless you're all up in your head, right? But you're always in the now, in the present moment. And so it's more powerful to do a reading and say, okay, what do I need to look at right now? What do I need to consider right now that's going to be most helpful to me in this moment? And I think that that's going to lead to a much more interesting and a much more powerful reading than just being like, what's going to happen? Yeah, so that's how I explain it. So I explain it in a way that gets them excited about getting a reading from me instead of disappointed that I can't tell them the future. Okay, so Renee Joseph, he said, why aren't my questions posting? I'm not spam. So I did see this one. That's weird that they're not posting. Yeah, I haven't seen any questions from you. Thank you, Sarah D. Post again. That is weird, Renee. Because Renee, you've been to lots of my live events and you've posted things before. I don't know why. It must be like flagging your comments as spam. Try again, and hopefully it shows up. Okay, so Lillian says, I did sign up for the class, but I'm wondering if I actually need it or not. Well, no, of course you don't need it. No one needs to take my course. So, and this is true for a lot of courses, I think. The course is meant to be fun and to take you on a journey and help you explore the cards in a new way and have fun with it. So there's different topics, and it's fun. It's a journey. It's, there's a lot of exploration and it's a lot of fun. So I don't think that you need it. I think you can probably be a great reader without my course. But if you want to go deeper into your cards and deeper into yourself, my course is a lot of fun, and it provides a guidance system, a framework for doing that, if that's what you're interested in doing. But Lillian, if you have more questions about the course, feel free to just reach out to me and I'd be happy to answer any of your questions. Okay, so Lillian, you also said that you're already working as a medium, so you're very connected to spirit, and you recently picked up tarot and you're reading it completely intuitively and what spirit is giving you. Yeah, that's great. I do know a lot of people that read tarot intuitively, and they've never actually studied tarot in terms of like the traditional meanings or the tarot system. I would say that isn't tarot reading. That's just intuitive card reading. And you could do that with any card. You could do it with playing cards. You could do it with oracle cards. You could do it with tarot cards. But I would call that intuitive card reading. But I wouldn't call it tarot reading just because you're reading with tarot cards. I think to say I'm a tarot reader, you should have at least a general basic understanding of like the system of tarot and the traditional meanings and a bit of the history and stuff like that. But that's awesome that you're able to read cards intuitively already. I think that's wonderful, because I think that that's a wonderful skill that a lot of people struggle with. And And, you know, it doesn't come naturally to everyone, so that's great. Okay, so Denise says, I'm having trouble getting started reading for others. What do you suggest on how to get started? I suggest starting with low risk, fun readings. So that could be reading for friends. It could be reading for anonymous people online. I know there's lots of different online, I think there's some Facebook groups. There's different online things where you can read for anonymous people and get feedback on your readings. And I've heard mixed things. I've heard some people say really positive things about that. I've heard other people say negative things about that experience. So I guess it just depends. But I would say start by, when you're reading for others, start by doing something that feels low stress. So even starting with just 1-card readings. And if it feels less stressful to do a written reading, start with that. So start with something that feels easy. And the internet is good for being able to reach out. I'm in a group, I think it's called Tarot Nerds on Facebook. I think I'm still in that group. And it's lots of people like to practice their reading skills there. And Denise, I'm not sure if you signed up for my course or if you've been in my courses before. But when you're in one of my courses, I have like a Facebook group for students in that course, and that can be a really nice, like, encouraging space to practice your reading skills. And you can just post in there and say, you know, I'm looking for people to practice on. And I find that a lot of people get started that way too. Okay, I like this question. If you're in any kind of funk with your readings, oh, it's not a question. So Angelic Michelle says, if you're in any kind of funk with your readings, this class might help. It helps me. And I think you're referring to my class. Thank you for giving my class a plug. Yeah, I find every now and then I get in a little bit of funk with my own readings too. And I think that it helps to kind of get outside of your comfort zone and shake up the way that you read. So if you always kind of do 3-card readings, or if you read every day or whatever, kind of like mixing it up a little bit, I find that helps. And of course, taking a course or something like that can kind of jumpstart your tarot practice. Oh, good. Celine, you signed up for my course. Thank you. Okay. I know you guys posted these comments a while ago, so I'm just seeing them now. Okay. Okay, I'm just gonna scroll up. Debs asks, are the classes live or pre-recorded videos? So the classes are pre-recorded videos. And then I do a live Q&A once a week in the Facebook group. And the live Q&A is also recorded. So everything is recorded. So you don't have to show up live for anything if you don't want to. Yeah. And I did that so that it would work for everyone for the most part. Yeah, so if you're in a weird time zone, or I shouldn't say weird time zone, a time zone that's like really far apart from mine, it doesn't matter. It does not matter what time zone you're in. Oh, okay, I like this question. This is from Renee. I love your deep dives into the majors. Thank you, Renee. Do you have a book that you recommend to get such deep interpretations? Yes, I do. So this book here, this is called Tarot for Transformation by Andy Matzner. And in this book, it's really cool. So actually this book kind of inspired the first video. The first video I did where I kind of dove deeply into a tarot card, I posted that back in February, and I started with the High Priestess. And I didn't intend to do a whole series, but that kind of got me started. And it was this book that kind of inspired me. So in his book, he takes you deep into each card. So I'll just show you a page here. He's got the Hermit, and he talks about what the Hermit means, some of the things it represents, and then he's got a bunch of like journaling questions and kind of exploring the things that the Hermit represents and stuff like that. So I think that's kind of cool. So it's a different kind of book. It's very different, but it helps you have more of a personal relationship with the cards and to use the cards to dive deep into things. So it's Tarot for Transformation, Andy Matzner, and it is available on Amazon and probably other places as well. But yeah, I do recommend it. It's a good one. Okay. Okay, so Celine asks, when there is a big issue in my life, I find that it pops into my mind regardless of what I'm asking about. Is this me being unfocused, or is there something I really need to know about the big issue? Oh, well, I don't know. I think if I had a big issue in my life that was dominating my thoughts, I don't know why I would read on anything other than that. So I think the fact that it's popping into your head when you're reading about other things, I think that's kind of an indication that that issue needs to be looked at. But again, I think that if you have a big issue in your life that is dominating your thoughts, this is something that you're close to. And so asking directly about this issue may not be super helpful. It may be more helpful to ask questions like, what do I need to do in order to deal with this issue in the best way possible? Or how can I support myself right now while I'm dealing with this big thing? I find those kind of questions can sometimes, give you some more helpful answers. So Constance says, I'm new here. Welcome, Constance. And you're a Pisces rising and intuitive and wanted to dig deeper. I have tarot and oracle, but most of the time my gut just senses and feels. I'm still ahead in the clouds kind of fish, laugh out loud. That's cool. So Celine says, how is it that the Three of Swords came up more than once for my question about best career path to pursue? That's interesting. Three of Swords. Have you considered, I'm thinking Three of Swords, heartbreak, crisis mode. Have you considered being a counselor or something like that, working with people who are having a hard time or heartbroken or in crisis? That might be one thing. How often do you recharge your tarot decks? You know what? This is interesting. I never recharge them. I clear them. So if I'm reading for lots of people, I always clear my deck between readings, and I do it by knocking on my deck like that. And then I like to use sage smoke. And sometimes when I store my cards, I will store them with I have a little quartz crystal, and I'll just stick it on top of my deck, and I'll keep my cards on my desk or I've got them just on my bookshelf here. But I don't ever charge my tarot decks. I just clear them. Okay, so Greg asks, I've read about birth cards while reading some of my tarot books. Mine are the Hierophant and Temperance. And I can't remember what birth cards are. I think it's like you add up the numbers in your birthday till you get one number, and then it's whatever major arcana card corresponds with that. I think that's how it is. So yours are the Hierophant and Temperance. Do you use your birth cards in any way? No, I don't. So I discovered what my birth card was, which now I can't remember if it was the Emperor or the Hermit. It was one or the others, or maybe it was both, because you said you've got two. So I came across when I worked with the book Tarot for Yourself by Mary K. Greer. I get it out of my bookshelf, but I got a bunch of crap in front of that book. So Tarot for Yourself is a really good Mary K. Greer book. And in that book, she tells you how to find your birth card. And I mean, you could just Google it too. There's other places to find out how to figure out your birth card. But she had some kind of journaling exercises to do. So I did a lot of journaling around my birth cards. But other than that, I don't use them like in readings or anything like that. Okay, Renee asks a question about my course. Are the videos for your new class the same content and worksheets as your Reading Tarot for Others? No, Reading Tarot for Others is a completely different class. So my Guide to Intuitive Tarot Reading, totally different from that course, all new content. There's a couple of topics that we covered in Reading for Others that I cover again, like tarot spreads is one of them. So there's a whole lesson on tarot spreads. And so there's a little bit of overlap, but it's a different course, or like it's a different video, different worksheets and all that. Yeah. How often do you clean tarot decks? I don't really have like a set schedule. I definitely like between readings for sure. Before I sit down to give myself a reading, I always clear my tarot deck. So yeah, before every reading, I guess would be the answer. Okay, thanks for being here, Gary. Oh, it's been an hour already. My goodness. Okay, so I'll take a few more questions and then I'll wrap it up. Okay, Maud asks, I'm just getting started with reading for others and experienced some insecurity about my intuition. How do I know if I picked up the right things? So that's the thing about intuition, is it's not always a sure thing. And there is an element of improvisation and risk when you start to incorporate intuition into your readings, which of course can give rise to insecurity. So how do you know if you picked up the right things? Sometimes you don't know unless you hear from that person. So if you're giving an in-person reading and you get some intuitive info and you share it, and they can either confirm, they may tell you, wow, that was really amazing. They might share that with you. And then once you get that confirmation, it definitely increases your confidence. And what I've noticed too is that when I get intuitive information, it feels a certain way. And I can't really explain it. I can't really explain how it feels exactly, but it's like the difference between, it's kind of like dreaming. You know, when you're in a dream, the dream is just happening and you're not putting any effort into making it happen. It just happens. I feel like intuition is kind of like that, and getting intuitive information, it just kind of is there effortlessly. There's an effortlessness to it. And so when I get that information and I relay it to the person, and then if I get confirmation back from them, it strengthens my confidence in my own intuition. I'm like, so I was right, and that's how it felt. So then when it comes up again in another reading, I recognize that feeling, and I'm like, I'm more likely to trust that feeling. But at the same time, I have been wrong before. It's not like using my intuition, I'm 100% right all of the time. I would say right most of the time, and a lot of times you don't hear back from the person or they don't give you confirmation. And so you don't know for sure if it resonated or didn't resonate. So your question was, how do I know if I picked up the right things? The thing that sucks about intuitively reading the cards is you don't always know right away if you're right or not. Sometimes you have to take a risk and put it out there. And if you get confirmation from the person, then you know that you're correct. Oh, thank you so much, Allison. I'm excited to have you in my course again. Okay, so it's 1:05, so I'll take a couple more questions if anyone has any questions, and then I'll wrap it up. I have a question for you guys. Is there any new tarot decks that you're excited about or that are on your wish list? I just found out about a deck yesterday. I saw someone post it on social media, and it's called the Wandering Star Tarot, and it looks really cool. I don't know if it's a new deck or if it's been out a while, but I looked it up and I looked at images of it, and it looks beautiful. So I'm gonna order it for Christmas and give it to my husband, and he can wrap it up for me because that's what we usually do with Christmas gifts. Oh, cool. Sarah, you just got the Wandering Star Tarot. And have you had a chance to use it? And if so, what is it like? Is it easy to read or hard to read? I find that I like decks that aren't too busy, but also not too sparse. Like I like something that's kind of in between. Like I feel like the Everyday Witch Tarot, the Lightseers Tarot, the Modern Witch Tarot. I find like those are all decks that are like in the sweet spot for me, where there's like enough detail that it's not too much, but it's also not, super busy either. Oh, Jackie, Tarot Nefertari. Okay. I haven't heard of that one. I'm going to have to look that one up. It sounds intriguing. Travel Mons Tarot? Okay. That sounds cool too. The White and Saunders deck. Okay, these are all decks I haven't heard of, so I'm excited. I'm gonna check these out. The Cartland Oracle. Okay, so Sarah, you said the Wandering Star Tarot has good card stock. Yeah, I noticed that there's in the Wandering Star Tarot, there's like keywords hidden in the artwork, and I thought that was kind of a cool feature because I find sometimes when the keywords are like blatant on the cards, I don't love that. And so I thought it was cool that it's like kind of disguised in the artwork. When do you use oracle cards? When I don't want to use tarot cards. So I tend to default to tarot. But I find oracle, like a lot of the oracle decks that I have are kind of what I would call a little bit sappy. Like they're very soft, very positive. There's lots of angels and mermaids and stuff like that on them. And so if I'm feeling like if I'm in a bad place, if I'm sad or if I'm anxious and I just think, oh God, I couldn't handle it if I got the Tower right now or whatever, then I'll like reach for one of my sappy, fluffy oracle decks for a reading. So I use them for that. I used to always use oracle decks at the end of a tarot reading for someone. I would pull one oracle card as a way to kind of finish up the reading and wrap things up, because I could be guaranteed that I would end the reading on a positive note. If the reading had been kind of rough, and if a lot came up in the reading, I knew that I could always end it on a positive note by drawing an oracle card. So yeah, but for some reason I stopped doing that. I don't really do that anymore. Have I heard of the New Era Element Tarot? I have not. No. Cosmic Cycles Tarot. think I've heard of that one actually. Tarot for Transfer. Oh, Debs, you just ordered the Tarot for Transformation book. Great. Do I use reverse cards? No, I don't. So I know how to read reverse cards, and I've experimented with reading reverse cards, and I find that there's enough variation in the cards when I read with them upright, and I feel like just seeing an image reversed just kind of does something to my brain where I can't read the card properly. And I feel like every card has a light side and a dark side. And so if you read for reversals and the card shows up reversed, usually that's an indication to read that card from its dark side as opposed to its light side, usually. So that's kind of cool. But I feel like I have a good understanding of the light and dark elements of a card, and I use my intuition to determine how I'm going to read that card. Yeah, so I just find reading reverse cards to me added a layer of confusion that I just didn't need in my life. So that's why I don't read them. I know how to read them. I've learned how to read them. I've experimented with reading them, and I find I just prefer not to do it. So it's really a matter of preference, I think. What's your take on using your intuition for imagery that is different from Rider-Waite? I don't really have a take on it. I think it's good to use your intuition for imagery that's different from Rider-Waite. Yeah, I have some decks that are like not at all like Rider-Waite at all. And I never know if the artist just doesn't know the Rider-Waite system, or if it's like intentional, like they're just doing their own thing. Yeah, but yeah, I think what's my take on using your intuition for imagery that's different from Rider-Waite? I would say it's sometimes it's good when a card has, different kind of imagery, because it does give your intuition muscles something to work on, something to chew on. So that's my take on it, I guess. The new Guardian Angel Tarot is good. Oh, that's cool. I don't think I've heard of that one. Thanks for being here, Celine. What should you think when you draw a card, like a negative one and a positive placement? Oh, this is interesting. Yeah, so a negative card, I think this is something we cover in my course, I think. Yeah, it is. I have a whole lesson on this. I have a whole lesson on this, Susan, on how to read a card in any situation, in any light. So to answer your question, what do you do when you draw a negative card in a positive position? If you have a good understanding of the light and dark sides of each card, then a negative card in a positive position, you may read that in a more positive way. So you're looking at that card through a positive lens. So for example, let's say a position in your spread is, what action should I be taking today? And you get the Tower. To read it negatively, it would be saying, destroy something. But to read it in a more positive way, it may just be about clearing clutter and getting rid of the things that are, in your way, to make room for something new. Or if you got the Death card in that position, that would be a good way to interpret the Death card. If you got, say, let's see, trying to think of another negative card. Well, someone throw out a negative card and I'll read it in a positive light for you. So yeah, if you get a negative card in a positive position, you're just going to read that in a Pollyanna-ish way, in a positive light. Ooh, I'm looking forward to the Oracle deck, The Lonely Woods, that's coming out in January. It looks moody. That sounds cool. I'll have to check that one out. Okay, so Jessica gives me the Ten of Swords to read in a positive way. Okay, so you could say, if someone gets the Ten of Swords, it could be about getting acupuncture and healing. Another way to see the Ten of Swords is that in your mind, you're thinking things are worse than they actually are. Like your mind is being a drama queen about this and making a big deal about something that's a minor inconvenience. Like the other day, a bakery that I had like the worst craving for cinnamon buns, and the bakery that has them was closed. And I was just like, what? Like I was like, it seriously like ruined my day. And I was like, this is not that big of a deal. That was like a Ten of Swords moment. Okay. A new elemental tarot deck. Oh, that sounds cool. There's controversy around it. Oh, that sounds intriguing. Always good to check out a controversial deck. Although I feel like everything's controversial now for some people. I feel like the bar is pretty low when it comes to being controversial. Oh, Five of Cups is positive. Okay, Five of Cups. Just trying to picture the Five of Cups. Okay, so Five of Cups is positive would be, you know, stop dwelling on the negative. If you look at that card, there's two upright cups, I think, behind the person, and they're focused on the ones that are spilled. So it's like there's actually really wonderful things in your life that you need to focus on, but instead you're just focusing on the shitty stuff. So that's kind of how I would put a positive spin on that card for sure. Okay, so it looks like there isn't any more questions, so I'm gonna wrap things up. Oh, interesting, Maria, you said you've never understood the Chariot card. Well, guess what, Maria? I'm going to be doing a deep dive into the Chariot card next week. That's my next card. So if you watch that video, I'm going to post it probably on Tuesday or Wednesday. It's going to have lots of cool journaling exercises and all kinds of stuff, and I think you'll have a better understanding of it. So that's my next card that I'm going to be diving into in my tarot deep dive series. So before I wrap things up, I just want to remind everyone I'm going to be closing down registration on my 4-week tarot course on Tuesday, I think, so in just a few days. So if you want to sign up for that course, I'm going to put the link in the chat here. It's a 4-week course. It focuses on intuitive tarot reading. It's tons of fun. I love teaching it, and I'd love to have you there as my student if you're up for it. And if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please consider doing so. I do these lives every now and then, and I do regularly post readings, and I'm having a lot of fun with my Tarot Deep Dive series where I dive into a major arcana card each week. I don't know what I'm going to do when I'm finished. It's going to take me a while to get through the majors, and then I'll see if I'm going to tackle the minors or not. I'm not sure. So I just want to say thank you so much, everyone, for being here and for all your questions. These were some amazing questions, and I had so much fun. Like I said at the beginning, I absolutely love answering questions. So thank you so much for being here live and asking me your questions. So yeah, I'm gonna say goodbye. So, and I hope everyone, I know it's not Friday, it's Thursday, but I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your week and weekend. And thanks again for being here. Bye-bye.